She called me kiddo. In the same breath, she rejected my promotion request. 1 year later, I walked back into that same office, but this time, I held the contract that decided whether her team survived. My name is Riley Morgan. I'm 33. Though most people guess I'm in my 20s, it's the curse of having what my mother calls a baby face, which might sound like a blessing until you're trying to be taken seriously in the corporate tech world. I've spent the last 4 years as a systems integration specialist at Atrix Core, a mid-sized software company that sells enterprise management solutions to healthcare organizations. On paper, we're innovative disruptors. In reality, we're a mess of legacy code and broken promises held together by the dedication of people like me. I still remember the day everything changed. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind where Seattle drizzle turns the world into watercolors outside the office windows. I had spent 3 weeks preparing for this meeting, compiling a detailed report of every system failure I'd fixed, every integration I'd salvaged, and every client I'd placated over the past year. The folder on my desk was thick with documentation spreadsheets tracking hours, testimonials from grateful clients, and analytics showing how my interventions had prevented at least 4 major service outages. By my calculations, I had saved the company approximately $2.3 million in potential lost revenue and contractual penalties. The meeting with Lauren from HR was scheduled for 2 p.m. I wore my best blazer navy blue with subtle pinstripes and arrived 5 minutes early. Lauren's office was on the executive floor, a space I rarely visited. Unlike our cramped developer floor with its maze of cubicles and stained carpet, the executive level featured sleek furniture, abstract art, and floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Elliott Bay. Lauren kept me waiting for 20 minutes. When she finally waved me in, she didn't look up from her computer. "Riley, right, have a seat." I sat across from her desk, folder clutched in my hands. "Thank you for meeting with me. Lauren, I've prepared some materials to discuss my contribution to Atrix Core and why I believe I'm due for a promotion and salary adjustment." She finally looked up, her expression a mix of boredom and mild irritation. Lauren Prescott was Atrix Core's HR director, a position she'd held for 6 years according to her LinkedIn profile, which I'd studied before our meeting. She wore her dark hair in a severe bob, and her lipstick was the exact shade of red that meant business. "Let's cut to the chase," she said, glancing at my folder without reaching for it. "I've reviewed your performance reviews, and while they're satisfactory, they don't indicate exceptional performance that would warrant an out-of-cycle compensation review." My mouth went dry. "With all due respect, I don't think my direct manager fully understands the technical complexity of what I do. That's why I've brought this supplementary documentation." I pushed the folder toward her. "I've been handling critical systems integration issues that no one else on the team can solve." Lauren's perfectly manicured nails drummed on her desk as she flipped through my materials with cursory interest. After barely 30 seconds, she closed the folder and slid it back to me. "Riley, kiddo, this is a company, not a charity. We don't negotiate with junior staff." Her tone was dismissive, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Your salary band is appropriate for your level. If you want more money, wait for the annual review cycle like everyone else." The word kiddo landed like a slap. I was 33, with a master's degree and 8 years of industry experience. There was nothing junior about my position except the way management chose to classify it. "I'm not asking for charity," I replied, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm asking to be compensated fairly for the value I bring to Atrix Core. I single-handedly saved the Metanova integration last quarter." "That's what you were hired to do," Lauren interrupted. "Look, I appreciate your initiative, but this isn't how things work here. We have procedures, salary bands, and review cycles for a reason." She glanced at her watch. "Was there anything else? I have another meeting in 5 minutes." The dismissal was so abrupt, so final, that I felt my cheeks flush with humiliation. I gathered my folder and stood up. "No, that's all. Thank you for your time." "Close the door on your way out," she said, already turning back to her computer. I walked back to my desk in a daze. The folder of evidence clutched against my chest like armor. Around me, the office carried on as usual, developers arguing over code reviews, account managers laughing on client calls, the espresso machine in the break room hissing as someone made their 3rd coffee of the day. When I reached my cubicle, I slid the folder into my desk drawer and stared at my screen, where 3 urgent support tickets awaited my attention. Each one represented a critical integration issue that could potentially disrupt service for our clients. Each one required specialized knowledge that only I seemed to possess in our organization. And yet, according to Lauren, I was junior staff, not worth negotiating with. I took a deep breath, opened the first ticket, and got back to work. What else could I do? The following weeks passed in a blur of late nights and emergency fixes. Atrix Core had recently undergone what management called a strategic reorganization, which in practice meant laying off 3 senior developers and distributing their workload among the remaining team. For me, this translated to an additional 15 support tickets per week, most of them complex integration issues requiring deep troubleshooting. My direct manager, Trent Wilson, was useless, a former sales rep who had somehow finagled his way into a technical leadership role. Trent's primary skill was creating impressive-looking PowerPoint presentations for executive meetings. He had no technical background and often came to me in a panic when the CTO asked him questions he couldn't answer. "Riley, I need you to explain this API integration issue with Metanova," he said one evening, dropping by my desk at 6:30 p.m. when most of the office had already emptied. "I have a meeting with the executive team tomorrow morning." I looked up from my screen, where I'd been debugging a critical authentication error for the past 4 hours. My eyes felt like sandpaper from staring at code all day. "Which integration issue?" "There are several with Metanova right now." Trent waved his hand vaguely. "You know, the main one. The one that's causing all the trouble." This was typical Trent asking for help without bothering to understand the problem himself. I sighed and opened a new document. "Let me break it down for you." For the next 45 minutes, I explained the complex interplay between our authentication services, Metanova's legacy systems, and the middleware we'd implemented as a temporary solution. I created diagrams, wrote explanations in non-technical language, and even prepared talking points for Trent to use in his meeting. "This is perfect," he said, scanning my document. "You're a lifesaver, Riley." "Since you're presenting this to the executive team," I ventured, "could you mention that I've been handling most of these integration issues single-handedly? I recently met with HR about a promotion, and some recognition from above would help." Trent's smile faltered slightly. "Sure, I'll see what I can do. But you know how these meetings go, lots to cover." "Limited time." He was already backing toward the door, my document in hand. "Don't stay too late. Okay, work-life balance and all that." The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me as I turned back to my screen, knowing I had at least 3 more hours of work ahead. Through the window, I could see darkness had fallen over Seattle, the office lights reflecting against the black glass like a mirror of my diminishing hopes. The next day, Trent didn't mention the executive meeting, and I didn't ask. I was too busy dealing with a new crisis. One of our database connections to Metanova's patient record system was intermittently failing, causing data synchronization issues. If left unresolved, it could potentially affect patient care information. I worked through lunch, methodically tracing the issue through layers of code and network configurations. By mid-afternoon, I had identified the problem during the last deployment. Someone had changed a critical connection string without updating the corresponding security certificate. It was a rookie mistake, the kind that happened when people were rushed and overworked. After implementing a fix and running thorough tests, I documented the issue and its resolution in our system. As I was finishing up, I noticed something odd in the logs, occasional unauthorized access attempts from an external IP address. They weren't successful, thanks to our security protocols, but they were persistent and targeted. I dug deeper, tracing the pattern of attempts. They seemed to be probing for weaknesses in our API gateway, specifically the endpoints that handled data exchange with Metanova systems. This wasn't random. Someone was systematically testing our defenses. With growing concern, I expanded my investigation and discovered something alarming while the external attacks had been blocked. There were signs of unusual data access patterns within our system. Someone or something was exfiltrating small packets of data, cleverly disguised as routine system operations. By 7 that evening, I had confirmed my fears. Atrix Core was experiencing a data leak, and it appeared to be exposing information from one of our biggest clients' Metanova systems. The healthcare company trusted us with sensitive integration points to their patient management systems, and we were failing that trust. I immediately drafted an urgent incident report and sent it to both Trent and our security team. Then I waited, expecting an all-hands emergency response. Nothing happened. The next morning, I cornered Trent in the break room. "Did you see my report about the potential data leak affecting Medinova?" He was stirring creamer into his coffee with unnecessary vigor. "Yeah, I saw it. The security team thinks you're overreacting. Those access patterns are probably just system maintenance routines." "They're not," I insisted. "I've been working with these systems for years. This is unusual activity that began after our last deployment." Trent sighed. "Riley, the security team has specialized tools and expertise for this kind of thing. If they say it's not a concern, then it's not a concern." He patted my shoulder condescendingly. "I appreciate your vigilance, but maybe focus on your regular tickets for now." I stared at him, incredulous. "Trent, if Medinova's data is being compromised through our systems, we have a legal obligation to inform them and create a panic over what might be nothing." He lowered his voice. "Medinova is our biggest client. They're worth over $40 million in annual contracts. We don't rock that boat unless we're absolutely certain there's an issue, which the security team says there isn't." He gave me a tight smile. "Trust the process, Riley." But I couldn't trust the process when I knew something was wrong. Over the next few days, I continued monitoring the situation while handling my regular workload. The suspicious patterns persisted, and I compiled more evidence. I sent updated reports to security and Trent, only to receive the same dismissive responses. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, I received an unexpected email from an unfamiliar address. "Cameron Foster at Medinova Systems, com." The subject line was simple: "Integration concerns, coffee." The email was brief and professional. "Morgan, your name has appeared numerous times in our system logs as the Atrix Core contact resolving our integration issues. We're currently conducting a review of our technical partnerships, and I'd appreciate the opportunity to discuss some concerns directly with you. Off the record, would you be available for coffee tomorrow afternoon? Cameron Foster, Senior Systems Architect, Medinova Systems." I read the email twice, my heart racing. This was unusual. Clients typically communicated through official channels, not by reaching out to individual engineers directly, but given my concerns about the data leak, this felt like an opportunity I couldn't pass up. I replied, agreeing to meet at a cafe equidistant between our offices at 3 p.m. the following day. Then I spent the rest of the afternoon wondering what exactly Cameron Foster wanted to discuss. The cafe was bustling with afternoon customers when I arrived, slightly early for my meeting with Cameron Foster. I chose a table in the corner, away from the main traffic flow, and ordered a cappuccino while I waited. At precisely 3 p.m., a tall woman with short gray hair and rectangular glasses approached my table. "Riley Morgan?" she asked, extending her hand. "Cameron Foster, thank you for meeting me." Cameron had the confident bearing of someone who had been in the industry for decades. As we exchanged pleasantries, I noted her careful, precise way of speaking, the mark of someone who chose her words deliberately. "I'll get straight to the point," she said after ordering her own coffee. "Medinova has been experiencing some concerning irregularities with our Atrix Core integration, and your name consistently appears in the resolution logs." I nodded, uncertain how much I should reveal about my own suspicions. "I handle most of the Medinova integration issues. It's a complex system." "Indeed." Cameron studied me over her coffee cup. "What's your impression of the stability and security of the integration points between our systems?" The question was carefully neutral, but I sensed she was fishing for something specific. I decided to be cautious but honest. "There have been challenges," I admitted. "The integration was implemented before my time at Atrix Core, and some of the architectural decisions wouldn't be considered best practices today." "Such as—" She was watching me intently now. I hesitated. This conversation was veering into territory that could be considered disloyal to my employer, but my concerns about the data leak weighed heavily on me, such as shared service accounts with static credentials, insufficient logging for audit purposes, and middleware solutions that were meant to be temporary but have become permanent. I said finally, "I've submitted several proposals for modernization, but they haven't been prioritized." Cameron nodded slowly. "I suspected as much." "Riley, I'm going to be frank with you because I think you're someone who values integrity. We've detected unusual data access patterns that we've traced back to the integration points with Atrix Core's systems. My stomach dropped. What kind of access patterns? Small but persistent data extractions, nothing catastrophic, but concerning given the nature of our business. She leaned forward. When we raised this with your security team last week, they assured us it was routine system behavior, but our own analysis suggests otherwise. Last week, they had already reported it, and our security team had dismissed their concerns just as they had dismissed mine. I felt a cold anger settling in my chest. I identified similar patterns, I admitted. I reported it internally but was told I was overreacting. Cameron's expression remained neutral, but I saw a flash of something in her eyes, confirmation, perhaps, or vindication. I thought as much. That's why I wanted to speak with you directly. She took a sip of her coffee before continuing. Medanova is conducting a comprehensive security audit of all our external integrations. We're considering bringing in an independent consultant to specifically review the Atrix Core connection points. She paused. Someone who understands both systems intimately would be invaluable to this process. I blinked, suddenly understanding where this conversation was heading. Are you offering me a job? Not exactly, Cameron replied. More like a temporary consulting arrangement. You would maintain your position at Atrix Core while providing expert guidance to our audit team after hours. Obviously, this would require absolute discretion. The proposal was both tempting and terrifying. Consulting for a client while still employed by the vendor was ethically questionable at best, potentially a breach of contract at worst. But the thought of finally having the resources and authority to address the security issues I'd been raising for months was powerfully alluring. I would need to review my employment contract, I said carefully. There are likely clauses about outside work and conflicts of interest. Cameron nodded. Of course, and I should clarify that we're not asking for proprietary information about Atrix Core's systems. We're interested in your expertise in identifying potential vulnerabilities in the integration points from our side. We discussed the details for another half hour. The compensation Medanova offered for the consulting work was generous, almost as much as my monthly salary at Atrix Core, for what would amount to perhaps 10 hours of work per week. But money wasn't my primary motivation. I genuinely cared about the integrity of the systems I helped maintain, and the thought that patient data might be at risk due to my employer's negligence was deeply troubling. As we parted ways, Cameron handed me her business card. Take a few days to think about it, review your contract. If you're interested, just send me an email. I walked back to the Atrix Core office in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities and ethical considerations. The right thing to do would be to escalate my concerns about the data leak more forcefully within Atrix Core, but I had already tried that route and hit a wall of indifference. When I reached my desk, I found 3 new critical tickets assigned to me, all marked urgent. One was from Medanova, reporting yet another authentication issue with their patient record access. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on my shoulders as I dove into troubleshooting. That night, after resolving 2 of the 3 urgent issues, I carefully reviewed my employment contract. As expected, there were clauses about confidentiality and conflicts of interest, but they were primarily focused on not working for direct competitors or sharing proprietary information. Consulting for a client on security vulnerabilities in integration points visible from their side was a gray area. After 3 days of deliberation, I sent Cameron an email accepting the consulting arrangement, with clearly defined boundaries about what I could and couldn't provide. Her response was prompt and included a consultancy agreement that had been vetted by Medanova's legal team to minimize risks to both parties. And just like that, I began living a double life. By day, I was Riley Morgan, underappreciated systems integration specialist at Atrix Core. By night, I was a security consultant, helping Medanova understand and document the vulnerabilities in their technical partnership with my employer. It was exhausting, but strangely exhilarating. For the first time in years, I felt my expertise was being valued. Cameron and her team listened to my insights, implemented my recommendations, and treated me with the respect I'd been craving at Atrix Core. As weeks passed, my consulting work expanded from merely identifying vulnerabilities to helping Metanova prepare for a potential transition away from Atrix Core's services. I created detailed documentation of all integration points, mapped data flows, and even developed contingency plans for service interruptions. Meanwhile, at Atrix Core, things continued to deteriorate. The company had lost 2 more clients due to reliability issues, and rumors of another round of layoffs circulated through the office. Trent became increasingly frantic in his demands, often dumping last-minute crises on my desk at 5 p.m. "I need this fixed before the morning meeting," he would say, dropping a vague description of a complex problem on my desk before hurrying away. I continued to do my job diligently, but my heart wasn't in it anymore. Each night, as I logged into Metanova's secure systems to continue my consulting work, I felt like I was finally doing something meaningful protecting sensitive data, rather than merely patching over symptoms of deeper problems. 3 months into my consulting arrangement, Cameron invited me to Metanova's offices for an in-person meeting with their executive team. I took a personal day from Atrix Core, claiming a medical appointment, and made my way to Metanova's sleek headquarters in Bellevue. The contrast with Atrix Core was striking. While my employer's offices were showing signs of age and neglect, stained carpets, outdated workstations, flickering fluorescent lights, Metanova's space was modern, thoughtfully designed, and humming with purposeful energy. Cameron met me in the lobby and escorted me to a conference room where 4 executives waited. The meeting lasted 2 hours, during which I presented my findings on the integration vulnerabilities between Metanova and Atrix Core systems. I had documented everything: meticulously shared credentials stored in unencrypted Excel files, hard-coded API keys in publicly accessible repositories, outdated security certificates, and most alarmingly, evidence of the ongoing data leak that Atrix Core's security team had repeatedly dismissed. The executives asked pointed questions, and I answered honestly, careful to focus on technical facts rather than opinions about my employer's competence. When the meeting concluded, Metanova's CTO, a woman named Elaine Chavez, shook my hand firmly. "Your analysis has been invaluable, Ms. Morgan," she said. "We'll be making some significant decisions about our vendor relationships in the coming weeks. I hope we can continue to call on your expertise during this process." As Cameron walked me back to the lobby, she spoke quietly. "That went very well. The executive team was impressed with your professionalism and technical acumen." "Thank you," I replied. "It feels good to have my concerns taken seriously for once." Cameron stopped at the elevator. "Riley, I should let you know that Metanova will be conducting a formal audit of Atrix Core next month. Based on your findings and our internal assessment, we're considering terminating our contract with them." I felt a mixture of vindication and anxiety. Atrix Core couldn't afford to lose Metanova as a client. They represented nearly a third of the company's annual revenue. "Will my involvement in the preliminary assessment be disclosed?" I asked. "No," Cameron assured me. "Your role as a consultant will remain confidential. The formal audit will be conducted by our internal team based on the roadmap you've helped us develop." She hesitated. "However, I want to be transparent about something else. Elaine has asked me to discuss a potential permanent position for you at Metanova." The elevator arrived with a soft chime, but I made no move to enter it. "A permanent position. Director of System Compliance," Cameron said. "It would be a new role, reporting directly to Elaine. The compensation package would be substantial, approximately double what you're making now, from what I understand." Double. The number echoed in my head. Not just a slight increase or even the promotion I'd sought from Atrix Core, but double my current salary. I need some time to think about this," I managed to say. "Of course," Cameron smiled. "Take all the time you need. But given the upcoming audit and potential changes in our vendor relationships, I'd suggest not waiting too long." As I rode the elevator down to the lobby, my mind was already racing ahead. If Metanova terminated their contract with Atrix Core, the company would likely face layoffs or worse. People I worked with, good people who were just doing their jobs, could lose their livelihoods. But wasn't this exactly what Atrix Core's leadership had brought upon themselves? They had ignored security concerns, dismissed expert warnings, and treated their technical staff as disposable resources rather than valuable assets. Lauren's dismissive, "We don't negotiate with junior staff," echoed in my memory. alongside Trent's constant exploitation of my skills while taking credit for my work. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a new folder titled Operation Closure. In it, I drafted my resignation letter to Atrix Corps simple, professional, and devoid of emotion. I also began organizing all my work documentation, creating detailed handover notes for whoever might inherit my responsibilities. Over the next few weeks, I continued my double life with increasing difficulty. Atrix Corps was showing signs of financial strain. The coffee machine in the break room wasn't being restocked. Maintenance issues went unaddressed, and a company-wide email announced a freeze on all non-essential spending. Meanwhile, my consulting work for Medanova intensified as they prepared for the formal audit. I helped them refine their testing methodologies, identify key areas to probe, and develop questions that would expose the vulnerabilities I had documented. The ethical implications of my actions weighed on me heavily. Was I betraying Atrix Corps by helping their client prepare to potentially terminate their contract? Or was I simply doing what the company's leadership had failed to do? Taking data security and system integrity seriously. In the end, I consoled myself with the knowledge that I had repeatedly tried to address these issues through proper channels. I had raised alarms, submitted reports, proposed solutions, and been systematically ignored or dismissed. If Atrix Corps suffered the consequences of their own negligence, I was merely the messenger, not the cause. 4 days before Medanova's scheduled audit of Atrix Corps, I received a formal job offer via email. The position director of system compliance at Medanova Systems came with everything Cameron had promised: double my current salary, comprehensive benefits, a generous signing bonus, and the authority to build my own team. The start date was flexible, but Cameron suggested I might want to align it with the completion of Medanova's audit of Atrix Corps. Reading between the lines, I understood that she was offering me the chance to witness the culmination of the process I had helped set in motion. I accepted the offer that evening, suggesting a start date 1 week after the audit. Then I finalized my resignation letter to Atrix Corps, setting my last day for the Friday following the audit. The timing wasn't coincidental. I wanted to be present for whatever fallout occurred, partly out of a sense of responsibility and partly, I had to admit, out of a desire for vindication. The morning of the audit. I arrived at Atrix Corps earlier than usual. The office had a strange atmosphere, a mixture of tension and forced normalcy. Word had spread that representatives from Medanova would be on site for a routine contract review, but those of us who worked directly with their systems knew this was no routine visit. Trent was visibly nervous, pacing near the conference room where the meeting would take place. When he spotted me, he hurried over. "Riley, thank God you're here. The Medanova people are bringing their technical team for this review. I need you in the meeting to handle any integration questions." I nodded calmly. "Of course. What time does it start?" 9:30. They're sending quite a delegation, their CTO, legal counsel, and some technical specialists. He ran a hand through his hair, which was uncharacteristically disheveled. "Do you know what this is about? Have there been issues with the Medanova integration that I should know about?" The irony of his question after months of ignoring my reports was almost painful. "Nothing beyond what I've documented in my incident reports," I replied neutrally. Trent's expression clouded. "Right, those reports. Well, let's hope this is just a formality. Medanova represents a significant portion of our revenue stream." At 9:20, I made my way to the large conference room on the executive floor. Several Atrix Corps leaders were already present, including our CTO, the VP of Client Relations, and to my surprise, Lauren from HR. She was arranging folders at each seat. Not bothering to look up when I entered, Trent introduced me to the executives who didn't know me. "This is Riley Morgan, our integration specialist who handles the Medanova account. I've asked her to join us in case there are technical questions." The CTO, a man named Victor, who had maybe spoken 10 words to me in my 4 years at the company, nodded distractedly. Good. Technical backup is smart." At precisely 9:30, the receptionist escorted the Medanova delegation into the room. Elaine Chavez led the group, followed by their general counsel, 2 technical specialists I didn't recognize, and finally, Cameron Foster. None of them gave any indication that they knew me beyond my role at Atrix Corps. Introductions were made around the table. When Cameron introduced herself as Senior Systems Architect and Audit Lead for this review, I noticed Lauren's eyebrows rise slightly. Female technical leaders were still uncommon enough to elicit such reactions in certain circles. The meeting began cordially, with Elaine expressing appreciation for the long-standing partnership between Medanova and Atrix Core, but the pleasantries were short-lived. As you know, data security and system integrity are paramount concerns in healthcare technology, Elaine said, her tone shifting to something more formal. Recent internal reviews have raised some concerns about our integration points with Atrix Core's systems. Our CTO leaned forward. Concerns. This is the first we're hearing of any issues. Our systems meet all contractual security requirements. On paper, perhaps, Elaine replied coolly, but our preliminary assessment suggests otherwise. Cameron, would you like to elaborate? Cameron opened her laptop and connected it to the conference room display. Over the past 3 months, Medanova has conducted a thorough review of all external integration points, with a particular focus on data security and compliance with healthcare privacy regulations. She brought up a slide titled, Atrix Core Integration Assessment Critical Findings. The room grew noticeably tenser. We've identified multiple high-severity vulnerabilities in the integration architecture, Cameron continued, advancing to a slide that listed issues in bullet points. Each one was a problem I had documented in my reports to Atrix Core's security team. Trent shifted uncomfortably beside me. The CTO's face had turned a shade paler. Lauren was furiously taking notes. Cameron methodically walked through each finding, providing evidence and explaining the potential risks to patient data. When she mentioned the suspicious data access patterns I had reported months ago, Trent shot me a panicked glance. These patterns, Cameron said, highlighting a graph on her slide, suggest unauthorized data exfiltration occurring through the integration layer. When we brought this to the attention of Atrix Core's security team in January, we were assured it was normal system behavior. Our subsequent investigation determined this was not the case. The Atrix Core executives exchanged alarmed looks. Our CTO cleared his throat. I was not made aware of these concerns. I assure you, we take data security very seriously. Do you? Elaine asked, her tone sharp, because our audit team has compiled a timeline of security concerns reported to Atrix Core over the past year, along with your company's responses or lack thereof. The next slide showed a damning chronology: dates, issue descriptions, and Atrix Core's dismissive responses. Many of the entries corresponded to reports I had submitted. The meeting continued for another hour, with the Medanova team methodically presenting evidence of Atrix Core's security failures and contract violations. The Atrix Core executives grew increasingly defensive, then desperate, as the severity of the situation became clear. Finally, Medanova's general counsel took over. Given these findings, Medanova Systems has determined that Atrix Core is in material breach of our Master Services Agreement, specifically Sections 7.3 regarding data security, 12.1 regarding compliance with healthcare regulations, and 15.6 regarding duty to disclose potential data breaches. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was coming next. Pursuant to Section 23.4 of our agreement, Medanova is exercising its right to terminate the contract for cause, effective immediately. We will be initiating the emergency transition protocol outlined in Exhibit C of our agreement. The VP of Client Relations found his voice first. This is extreme. Surely we can address these concerns without terminating the relationship. Medanova represents nearly 30% of our annual revenue. We're well aware of our value to your company, Elaine replied coolly, which makes your negligence regarding our data security all the more inexplicable. More arguments followed, with Atrix Core's leaders attempting various strategies to salvage the situation: promises of immediate remediation, offers of fee reductions, appeals to the long-standing relationship between the companies. None of it swayed the Medanova executives. Throughout the exchange, I remained silent, observing the dismantling of Atrix Core's largest client relationship, a dismantling I had helped engineer. I felt a complex mixture of emotions: vindication, certainly, but also sadness for colleagues who would likely suffer, and lingering anger at the leadership that had created this situation through their arrogance and negligence. As the meeting concluded, Elaine delivered the final blow. We'll need a transition team from Atrix Core to ensure an orderly transfer of services. Our audit lead, Cameron Foster, We'll coordinate this process. She glanced around the table. I suggest you select team members who are familiar with the integration architecture and who prioritize data security. The transition period will be 30 days, as stipulated in our agreement. As the Metanova delegation gathered their materials to leave, Cameron spoke up. We'll also need to schedule exit interviews with key Atrix Core personnel who have worked on our systems. Specifically, we'd like to speak with, she consulted her tablet, Riley Morgan, who I understand is present today. All eyes turned to me. Trent looked bewildered, as if he'd forgotten I was in the room. Lauren's expression was unreadable. Of course, our CTO responded automatically. Riley will be available for whatever you need during the transition. Cameron nodded, meeting my eyes briefly with no hint of our prior relationship. Excellent. We'll be in touch with a schedule for those discussions. After the Metanova team departed, the conference room erupted in chaotic discussion. Accusations flew as executives tried to determine how this disaster had occurred and who was to blame. Trent was particularly vocal, insisting he had no idea about the severity of the security issues. I remained silent until directly addressed by the CTO. Riley, you've been working on the Metanova integration. Did you know about these vulnerabilities they're claiming? All eyes turned to me again. This was the moment I had both anticipated and dreaded the opportunity to expose the systemic negligence that had brought us to this point. Yes, I said simply. I documented each of these issues in reports submitted to both Trent and the security team over the past year. I opened my laptop and pulled up my email archive. I'd be happy to forward you the complete correspondence, including the responses dismissing my concerns. The room fell silent again, but this time with a different quality, the heavy silence of realization. The CTO's expression darkened as he turned to Trent. Is this true? Trent squirmed visibly. There were some reports, yes, but the security team assured me they weren't critical issues. And yet Metanova just terminated a $40 million contract over these non-critical issues, the CTO said icily. The meeting devolved into blame shifting and damage control planning. I was tasked with preparing detailed documentation of the Metanova integration architecture to facilitate the transition work I had already completed months ago for my consulting role. As we finally dispersed, Lauren caught up with me in the hallway. Riley, I need you to sign an additional confidentiality agreement regarding this matter, standard procedure for situations involving contract terminations. I looked at her, remembering our meeting months ago when she had dismissed my request for recognition and fair compensation. I'll review it with my attorney first, I replied, enjoying the flash of surprise that crossed her face. Standard procedure for legally binding documents. The next morning, I submitted my resignation letter through the company's HR portal. The system automatically generated an acknowledgement, but no personal response came from Lauren or anyone else in leadership. I wasn't surprised they were undoubtedly in crisis mode dealing with the Metanova fallout. For the remainder of my 2-week notice period, I diligently prepared transition documentation, participated in knowledge transfer sessions with the Metanova team, carefully maintaining the pretense that we were meeting for the first time, and tied up loose ends on my other projects. No one from leadership approached me to discuss my resignation or conduct an exit interview. On my final day, I received an automated email from HR with an attached PDF titled Employment Termination Procedures. Ironically, the file was corrupted and wouldn't open a fitting metaphor for my experience at Atrix Core. I cleared my desk, turned in my badge and laptop to the disinterested receptionist, and walked out of Atrix Core's offices for what I thought was the last time. The following Monday, I began my new role at Metanova Systems. My first 2 weeks at Metanova were a whirlwind of orientation sessions, team meetings, and strategic planning. As Director of System Compliance, I had the authority to build my own department from scratch. Elaine had given me a generous budget and explicit support to implement the security measures I had advocated for at Atrix Core. Cameron, now my colleague rather than my clandestine employer, helped me navigate Metanova's corporate culture and introduced me to key stakeholders throughout the organization. The respect and recognition I received was almost disorienting after years of being undervalued at Atrix Core. 3 weeks after I started at Metanova, Cameron stopped by my new office, a spacious room with actual walls and a door. unlike the cubicle I'd occupied at Autric's core. "How are you settling in?" she asked, taking a seat across from my desk. "Still getting used to people actually listening when I raise concerns," I replied with a smile. Cameron chuckled. "Well, that's precisely